Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Shera, Robert Harding, Justin Ritzel joining me. Citizen Sports Weekly for Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. Wow, hard to believe. 8 days, it is going to be September. And that means NFL games that count. Can hardly wait, guys. And actually, that's all three of our topics that we're going to discuss today are NFL topics. First one, starting off with, as Robert calls it, the summer of Brady, that Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady took about a week off, maybe 10 days off. And this is unheard of. You don't see a NFL player taking a vacation in the middle of training camp. I mean, it's just, I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like that before. But as we all know, Tom Brady is in a class by himself. You win 7 Super Bowls. I guess you get to earn the ability to be able to take off during camp, which, to be honest with you, I disagree with. I mean, you have the whole off season to do your vacations. You want to go to the Bahamas with the wife and kids. Suppose that's where he went. You could have done that in June, July. You want to skip mini camp. You want to skip OTAs. I'll give you that. As a veteran, yeah, I get that. If Aaron Rodgers wanted to skip OTAs and mini camp, oh, that's right, he already does. But I'm just saying that, that's fine. But once we get into training camp, I mean, we're having preseason games, even though Brady's not going to play much of the preseason. But still, this is the part where it is actually the season, preseason. And I think your starting quarterback should be there. So, if Brady actually did go to the Bahamas or some other, vacation spot, he should have done it before, could have scheduled it before. There was that rumor that he was on The Masked Singer, that he had made a commitment to that. He couldn't get out of it. I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, football is your main gig, and you got to stick to it. Robert, your thoughts about Tom Brady?
This is weird. For those the few who watch this video, they know that we have to deal with your vacations, Chris. So I can't imagine how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers feel about having to work around Brady's little summer schedule. Publicly, they clearly have no issues about it. Oh, we knew about this. It was planned. All this other stuff. Okay. That's nice. You guys are putting up a united front. But yeah. I mean, as the reason that this is a story is that it's unusual that the NFL has a pretty long off season. Brady retired, then unretired, and even in that time, he still had plenty of time to do whatever he wanted until his football obligations, in late July. He could skip OTAs or whatever he wanted, and then just show up for camp. And the fact that that's not good enough does make me wonder, how much does he really want to retire? And what are the kind of pressures in his house, from, Giselle saying hey, you're not getting any younger. I know that she worries about him getting concussed, which, if they play the Bills in the Super Bowl, I would be very worried about him getting concussed multiple times. So I don't blame you there, Giselle. But, I mean, at what point does he say, there was this whole sob story, I think it was in Man in the Arena, about the things that he's missed with his kids and all this other stuff. Well, Tommy boy, you're not getting any younger. Your kids aren't getting any younger. Before you know it, they're going to be, you're going to be like Chris here, on this video, crying about your daughters going off or your children going off to college. And, you're going to miss it. It's going to go by. At least Chris enjoyed the ride. Tom Brady's off trying to chase some, invisible goal. This is the greatest of all time. What more do you have to prove, Tom? What more? Do you have to prove that Alex Guerrero isn't the phony that he is? I don't get what his goal is here. Either retire or don't. If you don't retire, then your commitment should be to your team. Don't be going off to the Bahamas while they're busting their tails at practice every day to try and get this team up to snuff in, what could be not really competitive NFC for them. So, hey, go ahead, Tom, take your breaks. I'm sure the Packers appreciate it.
Go ahead, Justin.
I think this is an example, once again, of the incredible double standard that is applied to Tom Brady versus other quarterbacks in the NFL, and how he gets a free pass for absolutely everything that he does, good or bad. I think of when first off, like most people, I was speculating on what exactly Tom Brady was taking this break for. I didn't entertain the idea that it was for an appearance on The Masked Singer, although that would be hilarious. Anything from, is he second guessing his decision to come back, to probably the more likely one, which is he had this prearranged break, or he was going on a trip and wanted to be away from training camp to rest up a little bit before the season starts, and a sequence of training camp where maybe he didn't absolutely need to be there. But I think of, Chris, you brought up Aaron Rodgers, who was criticized for not attending off-season practices, which I think is fair to say, when a lot of that stuff is just kind of making sure guys are staying in shape, doing a little off-season like lifting and stuff, and installing the playbook. I think that part of the schedule is a little less important than literally stepping away from training camp. And then I also thought of, there was that one year, I think it was 2007, when the Cowboys were the number one seed in the NFC, and Tony Romo went on vacation during their bye week, and how much crap he took for that. But, if Tom Brady does it, we just look at the results he's had, so therefore it's okay. I'd be pissed about this if I were the Buccaneers. I know they can't really say anything, because it's like Tom chose to come play here, and we don't want to upset the master, the GOAT. But I think it's hard to preach to the rest of your team commitment and being on routine and working hard at practice and all that, when your best player, your supposed leader, is just taking breaks off to go on vacation. And I think that there's a time and place where that's warranted, but I don't know. It doesn't, as I said on Twitter, doesn't pass the sniff test for me.
Yeah, and that's one point I was going to make, Justin, is that, if you're a Buccaneers player, how do you feel about your quarterback, your leader, basically blowing training camp off for over a week, and meanwhile you're sweating in that hot Florida sun, busting your rear end, trying to get better, try to get ready for the season, and here's Tom Brady. Like I said, he look, he'll be ready for the season. We know it. I mean, but still, just the idea that it's a team. And I've always, said that the team is, everybody's equal on the team. And I get their stars, and stars get different treatment. I get that. And veterans, especially, who's been in the league over 20 years. But I mean, the thing is, this is training camp. Okay. And unless there was a health emergency with a family member, which I know which Tom Brady said, no, it's not that, because his mom had cancer before. But he should be there with his teammates, busting the rear ends in that Florida sun, and trying to become better as a team and everything. And it just makes it look like that he's, not saying better than them, but he's kind of above them in a way. And I get that he is basically, but still, I don't think it's good for team chemistry if you've got one player, basically saying the rules don't apply to me, or I don't need to do this. And, you guys have to go through it and not me. So, yeah.
Keep in mind that, because I know Tampa is the NFC favorites at the moment, but, keep in mind, this is a team that will maybe, but maybe not have their best receiver to open the season. Chris Godwin's coming off an ACL injury. They're trying to implement Julio Jones into this offense. They signed another veteran receiver, Russell Gage. So this is not, and on top of that, they've been bitten pretty hard by the injury bug along the offensive line already in training camp. And they entered the season with some question marks there. This is not like some dynamic roster, like up and down the 53. Like, they have some question marks, and, to just shrug off the importance of training camp when they're going through a bit of a transition at some positions. We'll see if this ends up hampering them. Judging by the fact that Tom Brady is the luckiest quarterback alive, I'm sure it won't. But we'll see. I for whatever his reason is, I'm sure that there are some things that are okay. If it was a health issue or something like that, okay, then you live with that. But to ditch training camp to go on vacation, I think is a bridge too far.
Our next topic is, we're still going to talk about Tom Brady. There was Dana White, who is the leader president of UFC, which is MMA, said that Brady and Gronk were supposed to go to the Raiders a couple years ago, and John Gruden kind of put the kibosh on it. And you just wonder how NFL history would have been rewritten if Brady and Gronk had gone to the Raiders instead of the Buccaneers, but the Raiders had won the Super Bowl a couple years ago instead of the Buccaneers. But it's one of those what ifs. And of course, there's lots of what ifs with Tom Brady in regards to that he was supposed to go to Miami and everything and be a team owner and all this other stuff. But this thing with Gronk and the Raiders, it is intriguing because, Tom Brady is a West Coast guy. He grew up in the Bay Area. And of course, if the Raiders were still in Oakland, this would have been even more fun. But I don't discount anything. I mean, professional sports, especially amongst, the top echelon players, have become this like, I'm going to play where I want to play, and the team is going to make it work around me. You look at LeBron James and the Lakers, or James Harden, or some of these other NBA, free agents that like recruit their guys to come with them to a certain team and try to, build these super teams and, all this talent and everything. So, it would have been kind of fun to see if Tom Brady had gone to the Raiders, where they have traded Derek Carr. And of course, the whole John Gruden thing, because we all know that John Gruden is, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. You wonder if that's the reason why he decided not to do this, because, he would have had a veteran quarterback that, would have been a little more difficult to kind of boss around and everything. So it's an interesting piece of what-ifism, if it's true, which I'm not saying it wasn't, but, who knows? But it's kind of interesting how these rumors come out now, years after the fact. Justin, your thoughts about Tom Brady maybe even have been being a Raider at one point?
Well, I'm starting to wonder how many flirtations this guy has had. I mean, obviously, we know about this whole Dolphins scandal. There were reports that he was interested in joining the 49ers at one point, and there was conversations about doing that. Now you're bringing the Raiders into the mix. I thought this was Tom Brady, the ultimate team player, the ultimate patriot. No, it turns out he just, looks out for himself just like every other player, which, hey, that's fine. That's within his right, but don't build him up as this one of a kind teammate who, again, like we just talked about this training camp stuff. But I think Tom Brady has his flaws, and that's totally okay. But let's recognize them and not ignore him. He was looking for the best situation for him, and that didn't include the Patriots after 2019. So as far as the Raiders' chances in this hypothetical scenario that he would have there, I don't know. I don't think the Raiders have a very good roster. Like, I know they're kind of an intriguing team going into this season because of Devontae Adams choosing to go there. And I know they were a playoff team last year, but I think we can all agree there was a degree of luck and a degree of not facing very good opponents that allowed them to make it in last year. Keep in mind, I don't even think they won 10 games, but in a 17-game season, that's not super impressive. And, I think Brady made the right decision if he was going to leave New England and go to a team. Obviously, Tampa Bay was one of those rosters that was a quarterback away, and they by winning the Super Bowl. But if you're John Gruden, I mean, I don't want to say I don't want to pile on the guy because he seems like kind of a tool, but you're afraid of bringing in Tom Brady because you're afraid of some hypothetical power struggle. Come on, he makes your team better. Isn't that the goal, to win games and make your team as competitive as possible? You don't want to bring him in because of some weird pride thing, or, I don't know. John Gruden is a goon. It doesn't surprise me that he turned down this potential opportunity. And guess what? Hey, John, how'd that work out for you? Now you're without a job. So I hope you're happy with your decision.
Yeah. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, as we could tell by Gruden's email habits, this guy doesn't have good decision-making skills. With this thing, Dana White's a bit of a character. I follow UFC and MMA quite a bit, and so you don't know like how much of this is him trying to like pump himself up, like, oh, I almost got Brady and Gronk to come to the Raiders, and like, obviously UFC's based in Vegas, that's where Dana White lives, and so Dana White played it off like, oh, I was trying to do the Raiders a favor here, and it's like how what's the truth here, how close was this? But I don't think, on the other hand too, I don't think Dana White's someone that puts stuff out there unless it's actually happened or it's close to reality. So and I think that was part of it too, that I think Gronk was hosting this show and that's how the subject came up. But yeah, I mean, with the Raiders, to Justin's point, I mean, that this 2 years ago, they did not have a good roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which even with Brady and Gronk there, you had Darren Waller, kind of break out that year. And you have Josh Jacobs in the backfield, which apparently they don't care about him anymore. But they had decent players on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense really struggled. And I think they got a little bit better last season, but still, as Justin said, they won 10 games, and a lot of it was because the year before they stunk, and so they got to play crap opponents last season and padded their win total to get in. This year it's going to be different. I mean, that AFC West, we'll talk about it next week when we do our preview show. That is going to be, it's like the group of death in the World Cup. I mean, even the Broncos, now that they have a capable quarterback, are they going to be a playoff team? I don't know, but they could easily finish above 500 and compete for a playoff spot. Then you got the Raiders there, obviously, with the addition of Devontae Adams. The Chargers, have tried to, improve that team to better compete in that division and that conference. And of course, you have the Chiefs with Mahomes. So, I think that, maybe in 2020, getting Brady and Gronk would have meant something that 1 year. But after that, it's like, well, that division's pretty tough. That conference is pretty tough too. As Brady knows, that's why he cut tail and went to the NFC. And so, I think, I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, it's the Raiders. They're in a tough division. I don't know how long that relationship would have lasted for, especially with Gruden, because as you guys mentioned, Gruden's a character. I can't see Brady and John Gruden getting along for very long.
Yeah, absolutely. So our last topic, and this is something that came out last week, but we're getting to it now. And this is Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. He's been suspended now 11 games, $5 million fine. Originally it was 6 games or something, or I don't know. That's what the arbitrator, the judge ruled. And
6 games, no fine.
Yeah, 6 games, no fine. Now we're talking 11 games and a $5 million fine. And what are our thoughts on this revised punishment? Me, not strong enough. I mean, to me, the starting point would have been 1 season right off the bat. You're not playing it all this season, okay? And to be honest with you, I would have been an indefinite suspension and have to apply for reinstatement, okay? Look, all these things are alleged. We're going to, say that for the legal purposes, that this is all alleged. But, man, 24, 25, 26 women? I mean, we're talking over 20 women accusing him of sexual misconduct during massage sessions. So, I mean, look, I get the whole, maybe there's 1 or 2 women that are trying to, extort money from him, that kind of thing. But when it's this many, no. This isn't that type of thing. This is, I don't doubt that these women are telling the truth. And Deshaun Watson, I mean, like I said, being the father of two daughters in their early 20s, this is just deplorable, and he should not be playing professional football whatsoever. Should be definitely suspended a full season, full loss of pay, fined. I mean, seriously, this is ridiculous. I mean, he's lucky that he's a pro athlete, because if he was somebody else, average person, I guarantee he would have been indicted on criminal charges and he'd be in prison right now. Absolutely. So yeah, the NFL, I mean, I understand there's the players union involved in this. There's all this, process and everything. We've seen other cases in the NFL where Goodell has tried to discipline someone, and the players union, again, that's their job. They're representing the players, steps in and gets it, whittled down and everything. That's the collective bargaining agreement that the NFL and the Players Association have. That's the system. I get it. But Deshaun Watson should not be playing football ever again. And if he does, it should be years from now. And he should be expressing full culpability and paying a very hefty piece of change. Robert, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris, that, as I have said before, that I thought that the starting point should be one season. That and again, the NFL, they do not have to apply a legal standard here, which is why I think this process is a bit flawed with, bringing a judge in who does apply a bit of a legal standard, because that's what they're experienced in. And, Watson gets this kind of slap on the wrist penalty, like, 6 games. I think there's a lot of problems here. I remember back to when Big Ben Roethlisberger was accused of rape, and I can't remember. I think that it was investigated. I don't think anything came of it in terms of like actually going to trial or anything like that. But the NFL did punish him, and especially after, I think there was a second allegation. That's when they dropped the hammer and said, "All right, you're getting suspended." I believe he got 6 games. Now, in that case, you're talking about 2 incidents, not 20 plus, which is and not that the number should matter, because we're talking about some pretty bad offenses here, but if you're a serial offender, which is what he is being accused of, then that warrants a more severe punishment, in my opinion. And in this case, it would have been at least a season, if not longer. I want to say one other thing too, which is I think that this new process they have is a bit flawed. It definitely, if you're the NFLPA, you're quite happy about this, because it's a major concession from Goodell that he just can't, play sheriff and judge at the same time and say, all right, this is your charge, this is what your penalty is going to be, and enforce that. Now they have this process where, it almost turns into a negotiation. Oh, well, you want a season, the judge ruled, in a favorable ruling to us 6, let's meet somewhere in the middle. It's like, is that really how, a punishment should be handed out? That in this case, it's clearly everybody's acknowledging that it warrants, this penalty. But at the same time, it seems to me that the NFLPA really pulled one over on Goodell here, and I don't see how that is fixed. There's no way that they're going to give that up now that it's been applied in this instance, where they basically prevented a player from getting a year-long or more ban for a serious offenses here. So, that part of it to me is beyond Watson's conduct, is the worst part of this, that basically you're going to have a negotiation now where the player, in a sense, gets to dictate what his punishment's going to be. And that shouldn't be the way that it is. Yeah. The NFL, as a whole, generally speaking, is the employer here. You guys know, like if we, went off the rails and did something and, we get suspended, we're not in negotiations over, no. I don't want to be suspended 2 weeks. I want a week paid. That's not how it works. But this is the benefit of having the NFLPA on your side. And boy, it really helped Watson in this case, because he will play football at some point this season.
Yeah. Justin?
I think we've all been pretty consistent in saying that Deshaun Watson should have been suspended for at least one season. Okay, I think we've all kind of said that's the minimum here, and from that standpoint, it's unfortunate that we now have a final verdict, and it's less than that. It's still, he's going to miss a lot of games, but it's still, even with the fine, it still feels like a light penalty. I think we've spent so much time criticizing Roger Goodell, and I think I brought this up the last time we talked about Watson, but we can all agree too that having one person, in this case or in the past cases, it was the commissioner of the NFL, having one person determine how long suspensions are was not the right way to go about things. But I think we've learned that this new process, I don't know if it's any better. Like, the reason that, they were negotiating from a standpoint of, well, Deshaun's only got 6 games. So that's the starting point. And the NFLPA is saying, we're adding 5 more games here. That's quite a bit. If you're the NFL, and you're saying 1 year, then yeah, in a way they kind of did meet in the middle from where the original suspension was. But I don't know. I don't sense that Deshaun Watson was truly remorseful in the couple times that he's spoken publicly. He's gone from, I'm sorry to all the women that I affected, blah, 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 to still maintaining his innocence, which doesn't sit right with me. And now that the legal process is over, I guess, I don't know. I don't really know what I expect him to say, but what he did say didn't seem right. It still seemed off. And then from the NFL standpoint, the NFL is the biggest business in the world, or at least one of the biggest businesses in the world, one of the most powerful businesses in the world. And they were operating from a position of strength here. Like, you are not going to outspend the NFL when the NFL wants to do something, when it has its mind set on a goal. And they could have operated from that position of strength, and it still feels like they did not exercise all of that power. And that's how we landed on 11 games. And it's unfortunate. Like, I'm sure that the NFL just, maybe they actually care about the issue at hand here. Maybe not. Their track record suggests probably not. But I don't know. It just, there's a sense that this was not enough. And maybe they just wanted this story to go away. They didn't want to fight a legal court case that they definitely had the money to do. They didn't want this story to drag out. I don't know. It feels like the NFL should have just said, hey, thanks, Judge Robinson, for your recommendation. We're sorry, NFLPA, you're not going to like this, but it's going to be resources to ensure that it will be a year. Even if that means, guess what? We're placing Deshaun Watson on the commissioner's exempt list until we get this done. But that's the minimum, and they didn't go for that. So what can you do? And this story isn't going away, because when he comes back, guess who he's the Texans. How convenient.
Yeah, that's not a coincidence. I mean, look, this guy,
television for all the wrong reasons.
This guy is going to be booed tremendously the rest of his career. Every time he goes into an opposing stadium, he is going to hear it. And to be honest with you, he should be getting in his own stadium from the so-called Cleveland fans. Because if you're a Cleveland fan and you're rooting for Deshaun Watson, I mean, that's just, I understand it's your team, and, it's tough to root against your team and everything, but I don't know how anybody can root for this guy. I really don't. But it's the NFL wants this to go away because they've been dealing this story's been going on now for almost a year and a half, and they want to get it in the rearview mirror. There's a new season starting. Like we were talking about, the AFC West is stacked. Tom Brady's back with the Buccaneers. I mean, the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is back, and there's all these great storylines of things happening on the field, and the NFL doesn't want us talking about what's going on off the field with one of its stars and stuff that he did. So they want to move on, and they want to get this over as quickly as possible, and just let the talk be about the games and not what's going on off the field. So, all right, gentlemen. Before we leave, I just want to mention the passing of Len Dawson, who passed away today at the age of 87. NFL Hall of Famer, AFL legend, Super Bowl champion, and broadcast titan. There's so many things that you could use to describe Lenny Dawson. And, I grew up watching a little bit of Inside the NFL on HBO with Nick Buonacani, former Dolphins great, and also an NFL Hall of Famer. And those two guys had great chemistry. It was a great show. They were a great team. And again, I think Len Dawson is actually kind of maybe because when he played, I don't think his football prowess is really valued as much as it should be. The guy was a very good quarterback in his time, one of the best of his era, very accurate, and I think he's kind of overlooked sometimes. But Mr. Dawson, rest in peace. Great career, great life, and a lot to look back on and be very proud of. So, anything else you guys want to add?
Good.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us. Next week is our annual NFL season preview. Oh, this is a good one. We'll have a lot of fun. We'll have predictions. Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, folks. So, hey, join us next week, 3:30 on Wednesday. We'll see you next week.